Yeah, that is also. Shall we start?
Yeah, sure.
Hey everyone, what is up? I'm Salman and welcome to Salman Needs a Job. I'm here right now at Polygon Connect, an event around ETH India, a fantastic event, amazing people everywhere, and I'm here right now with a friend who is Chirag. Chirag, I am familiar with through first being part of a common call in one of the DAOs, and then we got into a call between each other, and then were introduced to the fact that we were both part of Bankless. Chirag is part of Bankless Consulting. He contributes to Bankless Consulting, as well as I have seen his work on Tokenomics DAO. He's written Tokenomics breakdown. I think we'll get into that about MakerDAO. So he's doing a lot of things in the space. Let's understand that. How are you doing, Chirag?
I'm doing excellent, Salman.
How's the event?
With a place like this, with an event like this, you just don't have an option but to be excellent.
How's today? What has today been like for you?
I think today has been amazing. A lot of people that I've been in touch over Twitter, right, through LinkedIn, in non-IRL format. I got a chance to meet a lot of those today here at the same place. Yeah. So this was like a really, really fun conversation day for me today.
I thought what is different about today is I think a lot of people, prominent people in the space are actually just hanging around from Polygon and elsewhere.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just a completely different feeling when you're walking and right in front of you, there's Sandeep from Polygon, there's Shailesh from Sequoia, and like, hey, so cool to meet you here. And that's just a completely different way of having a conversation versus let's set up some time and have a conversation, right?
Did you meet Sandeep?
Yeah.
I should meet him as well. Okay, let's talk about you.
Everybody should meet him, man.
Yeah, great space this morning. Let's talk about the work that you're doing. Okay, like what you're doing in the space. What's outside of Web3? Is Web3 your job? Like, are you working in Web3 right now?
Well, I mean, I got into Web3 when there was this really big pressing question that I had. I run Cliff Financial, which is an investment bank, right? So we do a lot of corporate finance stuff for the traditional economy companies, the startups, right? Which could include mergers, acquisitions, fundraise, so on and so forth. And the question really for me was, there's a titanic shift happening towards Web3 from Web2, right? How would companies like Cliff Financial cease to remain relevant in such an environment, right? That's really the question that's got me started thinking more about Web3 and what that means for businesses like ours, for professionals, Tradfi professionals like me. And
so you're thinking from a lens of future-proofing your business?
Oh, absolutely bang on, right? Not only the business, right, but keeping yourself relevant and future-proofing yourself as well, right? And there was
part of your skilling up.
Scaling up. One of the things that stuck me was, for example, if you do mergers and acquisitions, right? We do a lot of financial modeling for companies. Web3, you don't really need financial modeling. So what do you need in Web3? You need tokenization, right? Token economics, so as to speak. So that's when I started deep diving into tokenomics. Okay, as a financial modeling expert, how do you start becoming tokenomics expert as well? That was a journey that got me to identify with Tokenomics DAO. Became a contributor there, did some really interesting pieces on MakersDAO, which I think is one of the OG DeFi platforms, right? So if you want to understand DeFi, you have to start with projects like Curve and Uniswap and Makers and these and some of those, right? So Makers was my first port of call. When I got into Makers, I realized that there's something really amazing happening right now in the world of finance, and that is tokenization of real-world assets, right? Makers gave a loan of almost $200 million to a bank in the US called HVB, Huntington Valley Bank, right? What that essentially means is DAI, which is a stable coin, will be given to that bank, they'll convert it into US dollars and they'll lend it out to the end customers, people like you and me in the US. So people are consuming a cryptocurrency loan without realizing there's a crypto at the back end, which for me is the utopian use case for DeFi. Right, so that kind of got me interested into thinking more about real world asset tokenization, and I think that's another of the multiple thing that makes me so excited about the promise of DeFi and what Web3 could potentially do for finance. I mean, I can talk for days about it, but I know you have limited time, so
no, that's fine. So I want to just touch in on this. So are you saying that you started your journey in Web3 through educating yourself about tokenomics?
No, yes and no. So tokenomics was one of the things that I thought was relevant and I kind of deep dived into. I also did something very interesting. I joined a DAO called Bankless, which got me a chance to get introduced to you, right? Right. But more importantly, opened a whole world of super degens to me in terms of, right? And I realized Web3. Fun fact, last night, right? So I'm trying to set a call between three of us in Bankless. So I messaged this guy, hey, where are you? He's like, hey, I'm in Mexico, by the way. So I'm like, okay, I'm in India, you're in Mexico, so this is a time zone that works for us. We have to get another guy on the call. Where is he? He's in Australia. And I'm like, dude, how do you find these three super different time zones?
Use
and
let us
common
meet.
Time zone, right? Somebody's have to make sacrifices, sleep that night, right? So that's the kind of stuff you kind of encounter every day in Bankless and DAOs like those, right? Now, Bankless at that point in time in consulting, we were running a very interesting project in terms of looking at how M&A looks for Web3, right? So interestingly, we were in
Mergers and acquisitions.
Mergers and acquisitions. So we spoke to guys like Celsius. The day they kind of announced that we are in trouble, we wrote them a message saying, hey, you know what, we have an M&A team, we can maybe help you restructure, right? Wow. For example.
So Bankless Consulting did that?
We reached out.
Okay, yeah, but
right?
that's kind of the things that you...
Yeah, exactly. So those are the kind of stuff, I mean, if you look at the history of Web3, I think there would be like 10 odd acquisitions that have happened, right? Polygon has done 2 or 3. Right, Hermes recently, so on and so forth. Gnosis acquired the XDAI chain, right? There was the Rarify merge on which we actually did a opinion piece as well. That's actually published by Bankless Consulting, by the way. So those are the kind of really, really powerful use cases is what we are trying to build in Bankless, getting together a bunch of experts from across the globe, because these are skills that you cannot own and have as an individual, right? These are skills that don't exist in the world right now because nobody knows how to do it. Everybody's just winging it. That was the thesis. Can we in this DAO build those kind of competencies, right?
So it sounds like you've had a nice learning experience within Bankless Consulting too. Like,
absolutely. Bankless has been absolutely a fantastic experience for me. No two ways about it.
What do you know about Bankless Consulting? Like, can you explain to others like what is Bankless Consulting, what kind of things they do, and
So Bankless Consulting started with the concept of saying that the world's going to move to Web3, right? Web3 is a world where things are decentralized, right? Where geographical boundaries don't matter, so on and so forth. So will the traditional models of consulting work? So essentially the same question that Chirag was asking about Cliff Financial. There was somebody sitting in Bankless Consulting asking about consulting as a business, right? And they said, hey, you know what? It has to be a completely different consulting model. The consulting business will actually not be a consulting business, it will be a DAO, for example, right? People will come on their own, they'll choose the projects they want to work with, they'll bring different sort of exercises, skill sets, and will build competencies accordingly. So that was the genesis of Bankless Consulting. And as you know, Salman, right, in every DAO, it's a matter of somebody putting his hand up and saying, hey, I think I have this great idea and I want to pursue it, right? And then the entire team says, go for it, we are behind you, we'll back you up. And then the project starts to take shape, right? So was Bankless Consulting. Within consulting, there was this thing called M&A, and that was one of the things I'm more active with.
Very interesting. I didn't expect this conversation to go into Bankless Consulting in this detail, but it's great. Consulting is a fantastic project. Another thing I know is that I think majority, like a large percentage of the income through consulting goes back to the contributors, unlike any other consulting offerings. I hope you're enjoying the content out of ETH India, out of India Blockchain Week. Just a quick commercial break. I have a juice box campaign that I have up where you can support me by contributing. Yeah, just contributing to make to help me keep my lights on as I continue to do this. If you like the content that you're seeing on this channel, if you like the work I'm doing, consider supporting. Now, into tokenomics, tell me about your learning. How did you contribute your case study about MakerDAO? Obviously, is a very sophisticated piece, a very scientific piece. In fact, what has been your learning? Like, how are you understanding? How do you think about tokenomics?
I look at Web3 more from a business lens, right? I'm not a tech guy, right? I don't code, right? So if you are looking at any business anybody from a business perspective, right? You should be able to do a few things right to be able to do justice to analysis, right? In traditional business, it's about being able to read the books of finance of that company, right? कि आपको P&L समझ में आना चाहिए, balance sheet समझ में आना चाहिए, so you understand the health of the business in numbers, right? In Web3, you should be able to understand the tokenomics of a project, to understand the health of a project, right? And to be able to predict the direction and the good, bad and ugly about the project potentially, right? If there were more people who are spending more time on tokenomics, perhaps the market would not be flooded with as many Ponzionic projects as they are right now, right? By choice or by chance, intentional, non-intentional, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done as far as Web3 projects are concerned for them to have actually more strong token economic models, right? Because end of the day, what is Web3 project, right? You're creating your own currency. You're saying you're an economy in yourself, right? There's a supply, there's a demand. And unless you don't balance some of these things out, unless you don't plan out how your emissions are going to happen, right? How lock-ins happen, what is the utility of your token. If you don't think about these things, which are the fundamental of a business, then your project will have a short run. So whether I end up becoming an investor and choose to invest in projects going ahead, or I become a consultant, or whatever path I take, if I were to understand a project in more details, it is critical for me to have a very good understanding of the tokenomics of a project. So I'm not a tokenomics consultant 10 years down the road, for sure, right? But unless you have those kind of super strong appreciation of what entails a Web3 project, you will not be a top of the line operator in your field of choice.
Love it. I think you've really painted a picture of how important tokenomics is.
It is.
So help me understand tokenomics a little bit. Like what are the things that are part of tokenomics, and what are the variables there, and what are the things that as a tokenomic engineer you need to be like concerned with?
So as I said, tokenomics end of the day is a question of supply and demand, right? To put it very briefly, right, so that it doesn't become a technical conversation, right, but it becomes more a appreciation of the overlying concepts. There is a supply because when you launch a token, there is an emission schedule, right? You keep launching tokens out in the market at a regular pace, right? That is the supply, right? On the other hand, there is a demand, right? Demand is by users. Because they have so much use for what you have built, they buy your tokens and they use it, right? Maybe they stake it, maybe they consume it for a service like Ethereum, gas fees, so on and so forth, right? You consume it, right? So there is demand. Now, as long as the supply is less than the demand, right? Or let me put it the other way around, demand is more than the supply, right? The total circulating supply will reduce. What that means is that less tokens to command the value, which means the value of the token will go up. Now that is the ideal scenario that you want to create eventually. How do you ensure that demand outstrips supply, right? That's at a very high level the end game of what you're trying to build. So you have to look at how your emissions are happening, right? What is the utility of your token? Why would I want, as a user, want to take it and then stake it so that the demand goes out of the system and the demand increases and the supply reduces, right? So on and so forth. So these are some of the basic things that you have to start thinking of. Now these get into more technical conversations eventually, right? So how do you plan your emission supply, right? How do you create a staking schedule? What is the need for staking, right? For example, for DeFi projects, you do staking because you give rewards, right? Staking rewards. So that's a way to incentivize new user acquisition, right? So that is how you get new users, because you're giving staking rewards, right? In some projects like Curve, for example, right, staking rewards are essentially to kind of locking users up, right? So that the people who are providing liquidity, they get benefited, they get value out of that token, right? So various use cases, various projects, various use cases basically. But again, you have to kind of look at your project, you have to look at the utility of what you're trying to build, and then you have to create an economic model which kind of creates incentives for people to participate in your project and your economy.
Fantastic. Now, for someone who is looking to learn more about tokenomics, okay, so is it for a certain type of person? Is tokenomics for a certain type of...
Yeah, so again, very true. I think that's a good question, because what really are you trying to do in this space, right? That's the starting point of everything that you want to put your time and energy into, because you can learn so many things, right? You can be a community guy, you can be a content person, you can be a technical person, you can be a dev rail, you can be so many things in Web3, right? And these are all new skill sets, right? They didn't exist 5 years back, right? So there's a lot of opportunity to build up new skills, right? So it's really a question that what is it that you want to do, right? Assuming you are an investor, you are a consultant, you are somebody who works very closely with projects, or you are very deeply involved in the project, for example. Let's say you're deeply involved in Maker, right? Then you need to understand tokenomics, because it gives you governance rights owning a token gives you governance, right? And then if you understand the tokenomics, you can then choose to vote responsibly in a manner that the value of your token goes up, right? In a way that the decisions you're taking on behalf of the community are in the long-term benefit and advantage of the community, which in turn will lead to the rise in price of the token, which essentially means your value of your token holdings will go up. So you are directly responsible for the value of the tokens that you own. So if you want to be responsible for your wealth generation, then you need to understand at least the tokenomics of the project you're involved with deeply, right? Because you, if you're voting and participating in the decision making, आपकी जिम्मेदारी है आपकी value कैसे बनेगी. You are part. That is the basic premise of a DAO, right? You are a DAO holder means you are a token holder means you have governance, right? मतलब आप vote करो, आप decide करो आपकी कैसे आपकी DAO चलेगी, right? So that's.
I totally relate because I was involved with BanklessDAO for a long time, and one day I read the Tokenomics DAO their report on Bankless, and I was like, man, I didn't know any of this.
Yeah, in fact, that was Florian who wrote there, right? And he's one of the founders of Tokenomics DAO, and that's the best part because Bankless has all these concepts like tipping and treasury and how emissions happen and how projects are being funded on a quarterly basis, which we call seasons in the DAO universe, right? And when you look at the diagram, all of those things are actually shown. And then you're like, हाँ ये तो होता है, right? हम participate करते हैं इस tipping round में, इस coordinate round में हम participate करते हैं, right? And then you start to relate that it's not all just theory. That theory is actually converting into an impact for us as DAO participants and users. And that's a super powerful thing to realize, right? कि हाँ, right? I'm part of the system.
Anything else you want to touch on this regard? Otherwise, we'll move into just some of the other work you're doing in the space. I think you're also consulting, advising Web3 businesses, projects in India. So if you want to talk about that.
Sure. So, as Cliff Financial, we have also helped a bunch of projects raise capital from investors. Apart from that, I'm also advising 3 projects on various aspects, including partnerships, for example, right? So, thanks to the exposure that I had by working with DAOs and being an active participant in the Web3 ecosystem in India, a lot of projects reach out to me globally saying, hey, we're looking for the right kind of partnerships in India, and can you help point us out? So that's something that I have done occasionally, helping projects basically act as matchmakers between projects and the right platforms across the globe.
Awesome. Just generally, your vibe on Web3, what do you feel?
I mean, the vibe is cool, right? I mean, really the important thing to know is that Web3 is just not tokens, right? It's not Bitcoin ka price kya hai, Ethereum ka price kya hai, which is typically what at surface people tend to think and look at, right? I think if you go a step deeper, right, and you start engaging with people who are actually building, you realize that people are right now, even in this campus, building technology that didn't exist 6 months back, right?
Exactly.
Right? And 12 months ke baad, there will be so many new things that would have come up, which never even existed, right? Think about it, right? Perps, for example, perpetuals, right? Now, something like this didn't even exist in Tradfi all these years. It only exists in Web3. Now, people are doing options. Now, there's liquid staking. Now, people are building derivatives on top of liquid staking, right? So, as a finance guy, finance professional, to see so much innovation happening in the DeFi ecosystem, right? This is the same thing that we saw in structured finance, for example, back in the day in traditional finance. Now, all of that is happening in DeFi also.
But is it beyond that?
Beyond that is also there, but I mean, not at this point in time, but certainly it will be in 12 months' time.
But because of like the use of smart contracts and AI and all that, I think there's going to be like more like possibility for.
I'll give you another example. So, if you look at structured finance, for example, right? And I don't know if you know about a platform called Centrifuge. So Centrifuge basically is a structured finance technology platform. On one side is a crypto dollars, stables, DAIs of the world. Makers actually invest on this platform. Then there are pools that get created, and then you can buy real world assets using those pools. They do structured, right? So they do multiple tranches, senior tranche, junior tranche. It's a little bit technical, but I'll try and simplify it, right? So basically, if you look at the real world structured finance product, somebody takes more risk and he gets rewarded more. Somebody takes less risk and he gets rewarded less, right? These types of tranche bana dete, which also happened in CDO, which was the 2008 AIG crisis product. You do multiple tranches and multiple people buy those tranches and assume different quality of risk. Now you can do the same on Centrifuge. Now to kind of settle a CDO, you need at least 15 intermediaries, right? Block Tower, I think it was Block Tower, they did a paper where they said that there are 15 intermediaries in the real world right now which actually settle a structured finance product. Using Centrifuge, that 15 get reduced to zero. Because everything that those 15 people were doing can now be done using a smart contract. Everything, all reconciliation, किसको कितना value accrual हुआ है, उसको कितना transfer करना है, everything you can calculate on a machine. You don't need a different agency to do this. How powerful is that?
That is the utility everybody's asking for. Why Web3?
Now, so these utilities exist, right? Block Tower actually invested $4 million in Centrifuge recently. In fact, there's a Twitter thread I wrote about it, which you should definitely check out on CMehta01 on Twitter, right?
Next question.
Right? And by the way, along with they're investing $250 million on a pool on Centrifuge to actually access and purchase real world assets. Okay. $250 million. That's the amount of liquidity that's out there available. It's a crazy world out there, Salman. Just that it's not very publicly available because this is very proprietary knowledge. But people who will move first and build products around such proprietary knowledge, I think they're going to get acquired by the likes of JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs in 3 years' time, flat at $500 million valuation easy. That's the dream, guys.
I'm very, very glad we had this conversation. So the thing is, when we planned as well, I didn't know where this would be going, like what it is.
This never really is, right? I mean, you never know, right? I mean,
because we know each other and we wanted to do this, I guess. But this is a very valuable discussion, and the kind of context you put for the financial space in general through the lens of Web3 is like super valuable. Awesome. I'm going to close it. Anything else you want to?
No, I think thanks, Salman, for proposing this conversation. It's always fun to talk to you, and this was super interesting and super fun.
Thank you very much. Friends, friends, please subscribe to Salman Needs a Job. And if you're enjoying the content here, do consider supporting me on the Juicebox campaign that you'll have a link for over here. And all right.